Good morning. Thank you for joining us on NTV Today. My name is Gladys Gachanja. Hope you're having a wonderful Friday. Remember, this is your one-stop shop for matters, current affairs. And speaking of which, we are expecting a presidential address later on in the day as President Uhuru Kenyatta addresses the nation on matters economy and, of course, that finance bill 2018 that he rejected last evening and sent back to Parliament. More on the same coming your way in this bulletin and other subsequent bulletins. But of course, before we get to it, let's look at those stories that are still making headlines this morning. And 3 people have died and more than 10 others injured in Nasuit, Nakuru County. The latest outburst of clashes is presumed to have been sparked by the ongoing operation to rid the Mau of human invasion. Police have made 3 arrests so far and are still searching for other suspects, among them politicians alleged to have incited the violence. Bridget Ngano with more.
At Musegekwa village bordering the Mau forest in Nakuru County, light plumes of smoke tell the tales of terror visited upon the residents on Wednesday night. This is Rose Chepkurui's homestead. She fled with her children to the forest after an afternoon of escalated tension. She watched helplessly even as the food she had come to get for her young ones was no more.
Kulikuwa na kabati kubwa, ya seti kubwa, mahindi kunia 10 na marakwe kunia 3 na manguo, kila kitu ya kulalia yote iko ndani, mamitungi na majenereta, vitu ya vyombo ya kanisa yote.
Along the roads, women, children and donkeys ferried what could be salvaged from their homes as they made their way into public schools where they shall be seeking refuge at least until the chaos die out. Their stories on how the sporadic conflict began vary.
Hakuna mtu ile na ate fulani huyu ndiye tumekosana na yeye kwa kosa fulani. Yaani kama ni deni ama ni nini. Watu wanaingiliana tu na kufiekana.
Najua hapa ilikuwa imechorwa cut line ya forest, alafu kuna mashamba ya numberless. Sasa hii mashamba ya numberless watu wakatoka. Sasa hiyo walipotoka ikaonekana kama ni njama labda ya watu fulani kutolewa, alafu wengine waingizwe huko.
So I don't know what is happening. Maybe the government should come and then maybe try to bring the situation down, to bring the 2 communities together, and then I think itakuwa poa.
The afternoon was spent in a cat-and-mouse chase between the police and the aggressors. The maze-filled terrain only making the officers' work difficult. Security officials maintaining that the fracas was due to incitement.
Some people went beyond the allocated areas. And these are the people when we send the chiefs to inform them, and we inform them. Some politicians came to interpret, to give different interpretation of what we had told the members of the public.
8 schools have been shut down in the wake of the violence, and the area remains under intense security surveillance. Well, there has been speculation that the cause of the conflict here in Musegekwa is because of the ongoing evictions in the other side of the Mau forest in Narok County. Here in Nakuru, the families will have to spend another night in the cold, and they do hope that the leaders here and the security apparatus will find a solution to this matter as soon as possible. Bridget Ngano, NTV, Nakuru County.
Now, all the 10 people injured in the violence in Nasuit, Nakuru County had arrowheads lodged in their bodies. Now, the 10 are admitted at Nakuru Level 5 Hospital, as Sharon Baranga tells us.
Peter Rope has been admitted at Nakuru Level 5 Hospital with an arrow lodged in his head. Unlike other patients, he cannot sleep due to the extent of his injuries. Rope operates a boda and he was injured as he ferried a passenger from Keringet to Sigaon. He believes if he had a helmet on, then he would not be suffering. Rope and 10 others were injured at Sigaon village in Nasuit, Njoro sub-county in Mau. Nicholas Kepkemoi recollects yesterday's incident that almost cost him his life.
Watu walikuja wakatuvamia. Tulikuwa kwa nyumba. Tukakuja kwa Ikatum University. Paka hapa Njoro. Tukakuja tulikuwa na mshala chini ya mguu hapa nikang'oa.
One was taken to theater and eventually ended up in the ICU. Other 4 were removed, the arrows, they are stable.
The violence erupted between 2 communities in Sigotik and Tuitagoi yesterday in the evening. 3 people lost their lives. Witnesses say the violence was triggered by the occupation of land on the edges of Mao Forest by settlers. The government aims to evict more than 40,000 of those living in the forest in a bid to reclaim the water tower. Area leaders from Njoro say the attacks have taken a similar pattern to those witnessed in Narok South, where at least 4 people were killed and 60 houses torched. Sharon Baranga, NTV.
We're still keeping an eye on that situation in Njoro. Our reporter Bridget Sangana will be joining us later on to give us the latest from that situation. But for now, we cross over to Parliament buildings, where reporter Silas Apollo is standing by with the latest now. The President Uhuru rejected the 2018 finance bill last evening, and this was hours after it was handed over to him, and he has sent it back to Parliament for more deliberations and of course amendments. And this has also called for a special sitting of the 12th Parliament that will be reconvened next week, Tuesday and Thursday respectively. But for more on this, Silas Apollo now joins us. Silas?
Yes, Gladys, it's been quite a busy day, I think, for the President yesterday evening. Of course, after he rejected the bill that was sent to him by Speaker of the National Assembly, Justin Muturi. Of course, the action by the President has caused has brought a lot of reactions, especially amongst Kenyans, who are expecting probably that the President maybe would have accepted the amendments that were done by MPs to postpone the implementation of the 16% VAT up to 2020. Of course, you also be aware that the Speaker of the National Assembly has called for a special sitting of the House on Tuesday and Thursday to discuss the matter and also the amendments, probably the memorandum by the President on why he rejected this bill. And so I've just been joined by MP Simba Arati, who's a member of Parliament here, just to talk to us about maybe the expectations that they have come Tuesday and probably their comment and reaction in line to the President's directive. Mheshimiwa Karibu. So the President has rejected the amendment that you passed by Parliament. What would be your reaction towards that?
My question is, what was this consultation the Speaker and the Treasurer had? They should tell us. Therefore, either that's the consultation they had to advise the President to reject the bill. Because indeed, if they did not have, a consultation meeting, which was to remedy the current crisis, therefore is the same circus. But we want to promise the President that we will on Tuesday again send back the same bill to him, because we are not ready to negotiate on this. Mr. President, the only thing you need to understand is that this country, we have been wasting a lot of money, a lot of resources. People have been stealing left, right. Therefore, there is no way the same burden has to be passed to the common mwananchi. Of course, it's Parliament which passed it 2013. That's an argument. But my question is, who was in power then? It's the same group of people. Therefore, what we are saying is, Mr. President, even don't waste a lot of your time. We will reject the same bill. We'll bring it back as it were.
And of course, you'll come back and reject the bill. What then does this mean? The implementation with the IMF standings with the government, because the IMF, we understand that the 16% was a proposal by the IMF.
You see, what we are talking about is that the same IMF has been around, whereas it's watching the country in its wastage in terms of the finances in the country. Therefore, this one should not be the reason for us to be able to pass this burden to the common mwananchi. We have only suggested that if indeed the economy will improve, let us pass it. Let us push it to 2022 for us to be able to check around Of course, the president has a goodwill in terms of fighting graft, and we contain in terms of wastage of public resources. And IMF, of course, they can negotiate with IMF for us to be able to get other mechanism on how to raise money to fund our debts that we have around.
Mheshimiwa, there's been a lot of concern as well that part of this issue of the 16% VAT was an issue that emanated from the last parliament. You are the guys that passed it, and I made to understand you're also in the last parliament that passed it. Now you guys are proposing a postponement of this VAT bill. Does this mean that probably when it was being passed, of course there's also been this argument that there's a lot of overspending and misspending by the government, and so the best way is to impose more taxes on the common wananchi other than reduce the spending in government and reduce corruption?
But you see what happens if we wanted it to be enacted immediately. We'd have. We foresaw that it was a big burden to the common wananchi, and that's why we pushed it, expecting that things will improve. But if things have not improved, the president should feel the temperatures, how things are. Things are bad outside here. I'm sure now we have gotten our priorities upside down. Therefore, what we want to do at the moment, let the president agree with Parliament, because already Parliament has expressed that I don't think, the only thing is that the common wananchi, let them watch out. The player on the floor of the house. I know there are those ones who will run away. We will not run away. We will be there just to send back the bill to the president for him to assent, so that we can save the Kenyans from the so much in terms of wastage and management of the public resources.
And in your proposal now that you want to this 16 implementation of the 16% VAT to be pushed forward, what do you guys propose as members of Parliament and your Simbarati towards meeting these requirements by IMF? Because we made to understand that if we don't meet this, then there are a lot of obligations that we will have rescinded back on.
You know, the public is not educated on the implications of IMF, requirement in terms of passing the 16%. But my brother, I want to diverge from there because I don't want really to answer on the question you've asked. But I'm informed reliably that within the government systems, they have found individuals and in the office of the president where billions of money, individuals walking away with money, which money could have been put into the system to help the country. Therefore, the president, as is fighting graft, the only thing he would have done is to go down, first of all, to start from his own office, his own people, so that now the Kenyans can have the confidence that the president, what he's doing, he means well.
Of course, there's also been the argument that then what is the position of Parliament as well? There's been the issue of budget spending, government spending, the expenditures have been skyrocketing. Then the question is, what then is the position of Parliament in helping the government, reduce its spending? MPs have been fighting for more allowances. MPs have been fighting for more salaries, increased salaries and spendings. What then is the role of Parliament, and in your position, what should be done from your position as an MP?
The issue is not how much the members of Parliament, because if you are talking of 349 members of Parliament, it's little money, of course, which makes big impact in the economy. The big problem we have in the country is the budget making, where stealing of public money, it is involved. If you check on what items every minister has brought in, that's where stealing is. Therefore, the president, if he has to be able to work on his government, he has to deal with budget making. That's where wastage starts. Even the current budget that we passed here, that's where stealings of billions of money has been entrenched in.
All right. Asante sana, Mheshimiwa.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, Gladys, there you've had it. Members of Parliament, Member of Parliament Simbarat is saying that come Tuesday, the status quo is going to remain. Their position as members of Parliament, in his position as Member of Parliament of this august house, is that they are going to send back the same amendments that they had sent to the President. And so Kenyans should expect same results come Tuesday. So we'll be keeping tabs. We're going to speak to more members of Parliament probably in the course of the day, just to get a gist of what the matter is, and probably maybe the reasons why the President rejected the bill will also be coming up in his State of the Address, which is set to be done today. Back to you, Gladys.
Thank you, Silas Apollo, speaking to us from Parliament buildings. Of course, a lot of reactions coming from the fact that the President rejected that Finance Bill 2018 and sent it back to Parliament for further debate and amendment of the same. He also called for special sitting next week, Tuesday and Thursday, to deliberate on the same and other issues coming off it and are still on the in Parliament. And also the fact that we're expecting President Uhuru Kenyatta to give an address of and speak about the economy and that finance bill that he rejected last evening. We shall be keeping a very close eye and ear on that, and we shall be bringing it to you as and when we receive the details and pictures and sound of the same. But to our conversation this morning on NTV Today, and it is something that most people are living with. Others don't even know they're living with, others who do not understand it. And I'm talking about polycystic ovary syndrome. It is abbreviated as PCOS, and if we can put on screen that graphic to just enlighten you on what we're talking about. Polycystic ovary syndrome, it is a hormonal disorder causing enlarged ovaries with small cysts on the outer edges, and the causes, for some they say it's not very clear, but it's attributed to a combination of genetic and environmental factors. Now, the symptoms of PCOS: menstrual irregularity, excess hair growth, acne, obesity, etc. And I put on etc. there because it manifests differently in different people, and we shall be getting to know more about it. The symptoms, or rather the PCOS, by the way, you need to keep in mind is that it's very hard to diagnose because, as I said, the symptoms vary from one person to another. Now, the thing about this syndrome is that it can be managed by treatment, but it cannot be cured. So our conversation today to do with polycystic ovary syndrome, and it is abbreviated as PCOS. And to just give us an idea of what it is and also those that are living with it, in studio with me I have Dr. Wanyoike Gishohe. He is a gynecologist. Thank you for your time, Daktari. And of course Beatrice Kathure, who is living with PCOS. Thank you for your time. Now, Daktari, let's start first off. The fact that so far it seems that no one seems to understand why PCOS comes around. From your experience, what would you attribute it to?
No, it's not clear. It's not well understood, the polycystic ovarian syndrome. I mean, the first mention of polycystic ovarian syndrome was in 1939. And up to today, we still don't understand what causes polycystic ovarian syndrome. A syndrome is a collection of clinical entities which put together, then they put up that particular syndrome. Like polycystic ovarian syndrome, as correctly said, it will involve abnormal menses. Most of the time, the ladies will not have menses up to 3 months. Mm-hmm. And it may manifest in infertility. That's why most of the time we get it, because of infertility. And again, hirsutism, which is increased hair growth, mm-hmm. may cause acne, may be associated with obesity at the same time. Mm-hmm. So it's a combination of several factors. And when you do hormonal profile, you find there's increased male hormone among the females. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's not well understood up to today. There are various diagnostics criteria which have been proposed, but the most we use is what we call Rotterdam criteria, which consists in any of the three syndromes. That is symptoms. That is the missing periods up to 3 months, or unable to ovulate, and increased in male hormones, or increase in hair growth, and of course with the natural sound you get polycystic ovary, as correctly said, many cysts. What I'd like to clarify and emphasize, a natural sound showing polycystic ovaries does not mean someone has polycystic ovarian syndrome. There are factors, missing the periods, hair growth, failure to ovulate, infertility must also be there.
Okay, let me cut you short just for now. We'll delve deeper into it right after we come from the coast, where I am informed that there is a meeting amongst the Kenya Editors Guild in Mombasa, and speaking right now is the leader of Minority, John Mbadi. Let's listen in.
The National Assembly can promote the regulation of journalists and provide capacity building. There is a growing trend within parliaments to provide capacity building for journalists who work within it. which has not been an exception in the National Assembly of Kenya. But I think we still need to do much more. There is an example that I'll give you. I experienced something yesterday. You know, if you are covering parliament, and it's in line with what Macharia Gaido was saying, it is true when I came in the 10th parliament, I remember I could mention by name parliamentary reporter for each and every media house. I knew Chami was for standards, and that was clear. And the moment he left, I know Chami has left parliamentary coverage, is now doing something else. Someone else has succeeded him. There was Njeri Rugeni, I think, for Nation. We knew them by names. Today, journalists come to cover my story. I don't even know from which media house they come. And sometimes some questions they ask. If you are covering parliament, that is your job from morning to evening. You should even have standing orders with you. You should understand parliamentary procedures. In fact, I used to learn a lot from parliamentary reporters in the 10th parliament on parliamentary procedures. Yesterday, one of the journalists was asking me, now, Mheshimiwa Mbadi, if this finance bill has not been taken to the president and 14 days lapses, then what happens? I didn't expect such a question from a reporter covering parliament, who knows very well that that 14 days kicks in only when the bill has arrived at State House. When it is still in parliament, there is nothing like 14 days. So the question I ask is, really, media houses, when you are sending these your journalists or reporters to cover parliament, do you carry out an assessment, analysis, evaluation to see if they're doing a good job? I'm not asking you to go and sack your staff. It is food for thought. It is a space for capacity building. Let me move quickly to promoting good governance, which is balancing between ethics, self-regulation, and national interest. Ladies and gentlemen, there is no gainsaying that the media plays three key roles in promoting good governance. One is watchdog role. The other one is civic forum. It acts as a civic forum. And it is also agenda setter. The media is agenda setter. Whether we like it or not, the media can decide what we discuss in this country for a whole month. When they decide, unfortunate as it is, that it is now the issue of Sharon to occupy our minds, whether I like it or not, I will watch it, I will read it throughout until the time you will decide to change the topic. If it is VAT on fuel, we'll follow suit. So you are agenda setter in this country. Now, that comes with the responsibility, because you may set us on a wrong agenda for a very long time, forgetting the most critical issues of concern to the people. So media is the most important vital element for dissemination of information. That I think I've said, that the role of media has become extremely critical for smooth functioning of democracy, as it helps in forming public opinion on vital topics. And we must actually protect the role of the media in promoting democracy. That is why some of us have stood with you, even when the government, and many times the government will always aggress any government in power, by the way. Even in developed countries, even developed democracies, governments, if given space, will always muscle and interfere with media freedom. So it is the work of either the opposition, the civil society, or those who are interested in democracy to protect the media. It is my understanding that in fact, before I leave that point, there was a time we had a rally in Busia, and I felt the media, was it KTN? KTN was always reporting negatively against my party, and I felt this was not fair. So I decided now to use the podium that I had as the chairman of ODM and tell KTN to behave. The following day, I got representation calls, and they said, not you, Mbadi. You know, we know you as one who protects the media. And I learned my lessons then, that probably I overstepped. I became overzealous with defending my party to the extent that probably now I was not working in the best interest of the country. And the best interest of the country is the bigger picture. It's not about my party suffering at that time, but the bigger picture is, if you compromise press, media freedom, you will not get it back again. It's difficult. Those of us who probably were there ahead of us And those of us who might have read this, it took lives, it took pain for Kenyans to get back the freedoms after we lost the freedoms in the 1980s, early 80s and late, even up to 90, I think. It is my understanding that self-regulation is a combination of standards setting out the appropriate codes of behavior for the media that are necessary to support responsible reporting and process how those behaviors will be monitored or held to account. Self-regulation preserves independence of the media and protects it from partisan government interests. So what I'm underscoring is self-regulation for the media. No one should think of regulating the media. Media must do self-regulation. There is no two way about that. Ladies and gentlemen, elements of ethics include the principles of truthfulness, accuracy, objectivity, impartiality, and fairness. I think I've talked about this. Much as we want to protect the freedom of the media, we want you to self-regulate. The ethical standards also require you as the media, as journalists, to be truthful, to be accurate, to be objective, and impartial and fair to all of us. I remember in the last general election, during the party primaries, even before we started counting votes in my constituency, party primaries, one media house, and you must know that by then there was no handshake, so you must know which TV station was this, who was really against me. Now probably it would report differently with this handshake. By that time, they decided to run a story that I've already lost. And I'm losing, and we have not even counted. Fortunately, two media houses saved me and said, no, actually, the vote counting has just begun. Imagine if that story was left to proceed. And then, finally, I was declared the winner, as I was declared the winner. What would have happened? Chairman has rigged himself in. He lost party primaries, and now he has rigged himself, chairman of ODM. So, as you report, as you have your other issues, please, fairness is also very important. In fact, I got annoyed with that media house for almost 2 months. I could not grant them any interview, but we made up. Now we are good friends again. And again, with the handshake, the media house they are now my friend. Yeah, so I've talked about fairness. Alongside journalists' codes of ethics, therefore, it is helpful to have guarantees of editorial independence so that the journalists are able to operate free of direct control of the commercial interests of the owners. This is another area where we have a problem. There is commercial interest of the owners. There is interest of the senior editors in the newsroom. Sometimes you find a story which you told to a journalist has been misreported, turned upside down. When you talk to that journalist, he tells you, Mheshimiwa, mimi nilifanya kazi yangu vizuri, lakini ikifika kule kuna mtu hapo ameongeza zake. Now you left wondering, surely if you want to go to the field as editor and collect news, go and collect it instead of putting someone collect news, brings it, and then you put your own stuff in it. In so doing, safeguarding national interests is of utmost importance. I cannot overemphasize that. This is because in this digital...
Listening in to our retreat that has brought together editors and legislators at the coast, to be specific, Mombasa, and a lot being spoken about in terms of what happens in legislation, and the legislators talking to the media about how it is that we cover stories and what have you. A lot will be coming out of this, and we'll keep you abreast on the same. But back to a conversation of the day on NTV Today. We're talking about polycystic ovary syndrome. PCOS is how it is abbreviated. It is something that is very interesting and can be very slippery in terms of how it is diagnosed, because a lot of people misdiagnose it to be something else. But we're trying to understand it this morning, and to help us do so, we have Dr. Wanyoike Gishohi. He's a gynecologist, and Beatrice Kathure, who is living with PCOS. Now, before we crossed over to the coast, Dr. you were clarifying on something that The fact that you can have polycystic ovaries does not necessarily mean that you have PCOS. Explain that.
What I'd like to explain is polycystic ovarian syndrome. Syndrome is a clinical entity which contains different factors put together. It's not one single factor. It's not the way you can say somebody has malaria, therefore he has malaria protozoa there, it is there. What polycystic ovarian syndrome is a combination of several factors. Polycystic ovaries is just one of the clinical entities that we encounter. You
so
need also
I
yeah.
guess let's break it down.
Yeah,
What
yeah.
is a polycystic ovary to start with?
Polycystic ovary is an enlarged ovary with multiple cysts, at least 12 of them, which will be 3 to 4 millimeters, very small cysts that you get there. So if you do your ultrasound, you can get polycystic ovaries. But that does not necessarily mean that someone has polycystic ovarian syndrome. It's one of the entities you put together. You need to have polycystic ovaries, then you need to have an ovulatory, cycles where you're not producing the egg, which manifests myself by missing your periods for at least 3 months. So if there's polycystic ovaries and somebody is missing a periods for 3 months, then you can say they have polycystic ovarian syndrome. Or the other clinical entity is there's increased hair growth. There are polycystic ovaries and there are a lot of hair growth, what we call hirsutism. You have seen ladies who will have beards or hair on the chest. Then a combination of those will see that actually they have polycystic ovarian syndrome. Yeah, and this way it goes on because people will go to their radiologists or sonographers and they'll be told they have polycystic ovarian syndrome. It's not possible for radiologists from just an ultrasound to tell that somebody has polycystic ovarian syndrome. We can only say somebody has polycystic ovaries, and we need further history, other investigation, especially the male hormones, for us to say that actually somehow somebody has polycystic ovarian syndrome.
So for the layman, for you to have this syndrome, you have to have more than one symptom
Precisely.
that actually speaks to the same. Just one does not hold water.
Correctly said.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Now let's get to Beatrice. Maybe she can give us an idea of what it is or how it is to live with PCOS. What was your journey? How did you find out, to start with, that you had PCOS?
My journey started back on 2008 when I tried to conceive the second born. I was unable to conceive. Seen a lot of doctors, they say you have a stress, maybe you have headache, because mostly I had headache, backache, had painful, very painful abdominal pain.
What, during your menstrual cycle? Or
even
just
the
normal?
normal, yes.
Okay.
So it took me 4 years to conceive. And I conceived naturally. By then, the pressure was too much. So through stress and whatever, I managed to lose weight. Then when I conceived.
You conceived after losing weight?
Yes.
Okay.
Then after second born, I tried for another baby. That is to the end of 2013. I was unable to conceive. So I started trying all means to get a baby. Then so all of a sudden I started feeling unwell. My beard had started growing too big. I have to shave it every day. Then I sent it to generic because my mom has GP, and so I had nothing to worry.
Oh, so your mother had the same symptoms?
Yes.
Okay.
So I fell ill and visited a lot of doctors. Then finally I decided to visit a public hospital where I did a scan and showed that I had a cyst. And then I was referred to a gynecologist. That was 2015, and I started my treatment. In 2015, I did a ovarian drilling. That is after trying all it means to reduce the cyst and to conceive. I was unable to conceive, so we opted for ovarian drilling. And then I continued with my treatment till early this year when I said, no, this is too much, I have to stop. So I stopped medication and then I started concentrating on my life. Then on June this year, my husband was retrenched from job. So then I had to the depression. You know, with the PCOS sometimes I experienced depression.
Okay.
So I started losing then weight due to the family stress and whatever. Then on August, I conceived again.
Yay!
Yeah, now I'm 8 weeks.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you.
Okay, now, Daktari, there is a clear path in as far as Beatrice's case is concerned. Lose weight, conceive.
Yes.
What's the relation between losing weight and conceiving or not conceiving?
Weight gain, or what I'll say, the overweight or obesity, tend to cause increased insulin-resistant fat itself. There's no proper metabolism of the insulin. And when you don't have proper metabolism of insulin, we have what you call insulin resistance, and increases the male hormones that are produced in the female. The very minute amounts of the male hormones which are produced by the ovary, which are good, but when they're produced excessively, then in case of obesity, then they interfere with the formation of the egg folliculogenesis. And that causes actually what she has said is increase of hair growth, because if you have increased male hormone in the female, then there's hair growth. Just like in the male, that what causes the hair growth is the male hormones.
Yes.
And that's where the problem comes in. So if you lose weight, then you reduce insulin resistant, and you reduce the amount of male hormones circulating in the female, and that causes the egg to grow and ovulation to occur. So obesity in itself, even without polycystic ovarian syndrome, may predispose to infertility because of increased male hormones in the female. That's the mechanism. And the first line of management of PCOS is just lifestyle modification. You have to change your diet, you have to exercise, and you have to cut your weight. And if you cut your weight by 10%, then most likely the periods become regular, ovulation occurs, and conception occurs. So that applies to women, even to the male, that actually you can cause poor sperm parameters when you have increased, the male are overweight and they have obesity, because that interferes with the hormonal issues in both the male and the female.
So in the case where, you know, in an African traditional setting where the woman is being told you're the one who cannot conceive, you're the one who can't conceive, such would be something that actually matters when it comes to the guy. Look at the guy and see if maybe he's the one who has the symptoms.
Yes.
And is an impediment to the same. Okay, now, another thing that has come up in as far as Beatrice's story is concerned is that she had the cysts. They tried to get rid of them. She was on treatment. She even got off treatment because she was tired of it. And for her, her solution was just losing the weight. So are you saying it is possible to conceive even if you have polycystic ovaries?
Precisely, it's true. One, if you have polycystic ovaries alone without polycystic ovarian syndrome, the conception will occur. But even if polycystic ovarian syndrome, the first line of management is simply to lose weight. If there's obesity, 10% is not to do surgery. Assuming somebody has a BMI of 30 and you lose weight and your BMI, normal body mass index is less than 25, you get a normal BMI, then conception will occur, and the first of line, that's how I do it. The patient comes in, she has abnormal periods, she cannot conceive, and I make a diagnosis of PCOS. The first thing we're going to tell them, lose weight modification. Then, of course, if the issue is infertility, we are going to put on infertility drugs. They may aid again. In some cases, we may even give the oral drugs we give people with diabetes mellitus, what we call oral hypoglycemics, because we have said the problem when you have obesity is there is increased insulin resistance. And when you give diabetic drugs, they reduce insulin resistance, conception can occur. In the worst cases when it occurs, then what she has said, she went to theater and she was done what you call laparoscopic drilling. Then we can be able to drill. Again, drilling, all these drugs, all this is geared to reducing male hormones that is circulating in the female. Even when you do surgery and burn the ovaries, we're just reducing the amount of androgens, the male hormones which are circulating. And in the worst case, sometimes patients may have to go for in vitro fertilization. Again, the results are not very good. The quality of the eggs in polycystic ovarian ovaries, they're not very good. Polycystic ovarian syndrome, they're not very good. So even the result in IVF, they're not very good. But the emphasis actually is lifestyle modification. And again, trying to conceive as early as possible when one realizes it has a problem, because it won't get any better and may continue to go to what we call metabolic syndrome, where it will involve polycystic ovarian syndrome, diabetes mellitus, and actually may end up with heart disease. All of them, the combination, and the condition may get worse.
Okay, Beatrice, back to you. You said your beard was growing and you thought it was normal because your mother used to have facial hair. Now, when you look back in retrospect, did your mother also, you know, struggle in conceiving?
No.
She did not?
No.
So what spoke to the fact that she had facial hair? What was that?
I don't know. So I thought it's genetic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is it genetic? What are we seeing here? How is it that the mother had facial hair, no issues with conceiving, the daughter had the same symptoms but had issues with conceiving? What are we looking at here?
We don't know. The PCOS could be genetic component, but most of the time it's just environmental. Because if people, for those who try to get children slightly early and continually, persistently get children, they're more likely just to live normal life. But in the modern society, when people are staying for a long time, and we have said obesity is an issue, then that may contribute. So it's a question of when did the first conception occur, and how soon did the other babies follow? You get it? So because the environment plays a key role.
Yes.
Now in the modern society, we are getting children in the late 20s, in the 30s, and that means these diseases tend to manifest earlier, and by the time somebody trying to conceive, they have already manifested and maybe gotten worse.
Okay, so some of the questions would be for you, Beatrice. This is your third child that you're expecting. Let's talk about the second one. Some would wonder, would you have a normal pregnancy and a normal birth and baby thereafter? And you'll answer that right after we come back from the coast. I am being told that Speaker of Parliament Justin Muturi is speaking at the Editors and Legislators Retreat in Mombasa. Let's listen in.
The party leader of the minority coalition in the House. Please, our hands together. Thank you very much, John. You've said many of the things that I thought I was going to say. Maybe people may think it's because we are always together in the house business. But what I admire about John Bandi is that he speaks his mind. So don't hold it against him for saying what he believes in. I know him to be that way. And the most interesting thing about my association with John Bandi is that I came to know him first when I was myself not in Parliament. And it's just something I used to admire about how he speaks his mind freely, without fear, favor, affection, or ill will. That is the Honorable John Bandi. Honourable members here present, members of the Editors Guild, members of staff, the immediate past chair of the KPJA, Mr. Ketel. I don't see you as successor. I think you have not turned over the ropes. I think you are indicated that you will be coming to hand over. And members of KPJA who are present, and distinguished invited guests, ladies and gentlemen. I may not say many of the things that I had intended to say because they have been said by John Bandi. But allow me to welcome you all to this retreat, which has been called for purposes of us putting our hands together and peer review our symbiotic relationship while looking for a way of deepening it further for the good of our nation. Indeed, this has been amply amplified by the Honorable John Bandi. I'm grateful that we have all elected to create time to attend this engagement forum, and I can only look forward to us having great and candid conversations. But as I say this, allow me also to allay any fears that any one of you could have for the presence in heavy numbers of members of the Powers and Privileges Committee of the House. As you all know, hopefully, courtesy of the communication that I made in the House, we intend as the Powers and Privileges Committee to sit and listen to a few of our colleagues with regard to certain matters that have been said that touch on both privileges and ethics of members. And like other jurisdictions where they have committees or standards and ethics. Ours is all put together in the Powers and Privileges Committee. And as you know, towards the tail end of the last parliament, we did enact, we reviewed the old pre-independence Powers and Privileges Act to bring it in tandem first with the reality of bicameralism that was ushered in by our new constitution in 2010. So they are here to share with you also and hear from you some of the issues that may be of concern to that committee, because it has a wide-ranging mandate. Allow me to state that, as you know, Article 118, Clause 2, Paragraph B of the Constitution states that Parliament shall facilitate public participation and involvement in the legislative and other business of Parliament and its committees. Thus, in line with the spirit and letter of the this constitutional provision, we at the National Assembly have continued to facilitate public access and participation to parliamentary business. On the other hand, the media bears the hallowed task of independently and accurately reporting on Parliament. This annual engagement is thus a sure evidence of our commitment to engage with the fourth estate and ensure an objective and informative furtherance of the parliamentary agenda. This forum also accounts as an opportunity to not only well understand the mandate of the National Assembly, but also continually evaluate the relationship of the media and Parliament and seek ways of improving it for the good of the nation. Of course, I am, the moment the Honorable John Bandy talked about being too close, what came to my mind, and I'm happy that my very good friend, the Honorable Dr. Otiende Molo is here, was the areas of affinity and consanguinity. I wondered whether we could if we became too close, then we could find ourselves being in violation of that relationship. As you know, legislatures, as much as they are among the most unpopular institutions in the governance spectrum world over, have a very unique standing in society. They offer a diversity of representation for peoples of all walks of life that ought to make universal suffrage a meaningful exercise. The electorates cede their power to the leaders they elect to office, with the hope that they will represent their interests with utmost diligence and with their very cause at heart. Indeed, as you say, this is picked from Article 95, Clause 2, that the National Assembly deliberates and resolves issues of concern to the people. Our unique and symbiotic partnership with the media should accord us the very opportunity to meet that expectation by the people, by you promoting the parliamentary agenda, for this is more often than not the agenda of the people we represent, or so we think, while remaining vigilant to ensure that we live true to our cause. Our continuous engagement forms part of the national efforts towards promoting patriotism, advocating for all persons to embrace and safeguard the interests of this nation, and consequently, a robust coverage of parliamentary work as a way of demystifying Parliament and its workings to the public. Needless to say, that this ultimately enhances the image of Parliament, or so it is assumed, inculcating public confidence on the people of their elected leaders. And at this point, I wish to just give some small story that I never forget. That during the 8th Parliament, the then member for Cherangani, Honorable Kipruto Kirwa, introduced a private member's motion seeking leave of the House to bring legislation to introduce live coverage of parliamentary proceedings. I think that time, my good friend Linus Kakai was a young journalist. Not that Joe Ageo was any older. The motion was finally passed in the normal way, as you know. Those days you are required to state the members to sit in that select committee. In the course of our benchmarking, trying to see how it is done in other jurisdictions, we traveled to a few countries: South Africa, Germany, UK, the US, Sweden. But it was in Germany that I still remember some story. In the evening, when we were having dinner, some old legislator in the Bundestag in Germany looked at us, looked at Kirwa, looked at myself, looked at the Gadango, and a few others. And he asked us, how old is your democracy? And we really felt that this guy was really, we could see he was actually, he had something very negative about what it is that we were seeking to do. That was around 2001, I think. And we told him, well, we've been independent since 1963, and we think that is long enough. He said, oh, you think so? Again, of course, we were looking at each other and wondering how to respond to this without old man. He told us, you know, it is a good idea, but just want to caution you that live coverage of parliamentary proceedings means, among other things, that now you are brought into people's sitting rooms and into others' bedrooms and into public places, bars and clubs, the goings on in the house. And therefore you need a lot of training of your members, of yourselves, because any small thing you do, you never know how it is going to be perceived. And I just remember this because John Bandy spoke about the beauty of live coverage, that sometimes, again, somebody said, just made some very, very interesting remark, Macharia. Somebody was complaining that their member of parliament doesn't speak. I said, but even if he does say anything, you know, can't he just walk around? I'm told there are toilets around. He can even walk around and say he's going to the toilet if he can't say anything. So, there we are. Perhaps that's the reason why, as Macharia was lamenting, in fact, not lamenting, I think, speaking with an Olsagi about those days when you'd find about 3 or 4 pages of parliamentary debates. But you see, these days, Linus, a member will rise in their place and it's very, very, you can see he's almost banging tables. He has not even understood, he not even read the order paper, but they want to say something. And this, the reason for wanting to say something is because there is pressure from home. So you just say, what has been said? In fact, with those few remarks, Mr. Speaker, I support. But you know, the member has been seen because it's live coverage. So every time I see those things happen, I still take my mind back to the caution that we were given by the legislator in Berlin. Over time, when we meet, we've been able to ask and tackle hard questions on how we relate in nation building, and we shall endeavor to pursue that route. Indeed, we share the most vital role of promoting good governance by appraising the executive arm of government, keeping it in check, while remaining as a true vanguard of the people at all times. This ensures that the practice of democratic governance is carried out effectively and in accordance with the interests of the citizenry. I therefore cannot overemphasize the complementarities between the media and the legislature, which is vital to the country's overall development. Indeed, this has been clearly demonstrated by the Honorable John Bandi. The values of integrity, transparency, and accountability in public administrations have enjoyed resurgence with the advent of modern democracies. As a matter of fact, efficient public administration is fueled by public trust. Citizens expect public servants and state officers to serve the public interest, and remember the difference as explained by the Honorable Bandi, with fairness and to manage public resources properly on a daily basis. Fair and reliable public services and predictable decision-making inspire public trust and create conducive environment for sustainable economic growth. The role of the media in scrutinizing the agencies charged with this responsibility cannot be gainsaid. This is why we at the National Assembly have remained keen in engaging you, all while remaining open to your scrutiny and criticism. But the media too has a great role to play at the center of creating that public confidence, by not only focusing on the issues that gnaw on our very national fabric, but by also at times removing blinkers and headlining what gives us national pride and inspires us as a society. While it is conventionally agreed among all of us that without mass media, openness and accountability are difficult in contemporary democracies, it must not be lost on us the fact that the media can either hinder political transparency or help enhance it. Indeed, elected representatives and political operatives can simulate the political virtues of transparency through rhetorical and media partnership, as demonstrated again by my friend Bandi. Free and accurate reportage of parliamentary proceedings, both in the committees and in the plenary, are cornerstone of any democracy. Indeed, Articles 34 and 35 of the Constitution, as well as the National Assembly standing orders, guarantee you that right. In addition, the Access to Information Act of 2015 creates a new reality towards the management of public information, which the core departments responsible for facilitating access to information in Parliament are alive to. In this respect, the media too has two main aspects as part of what is known as information industry and as a factor in the formulation of opinion. In both respects, it has to act with responsibility to be effective or reliable. And remember, before I proceed, at this point again, was almost alluded to by my friend John Bandi. The issue of accuracy. On the day we went to recess, if you remember, on 30th of August, after passing the finance bill on Thursday. The next day was Friday. I think I spent most of my day in committee meetings, I think powers and privileges, or commission meeting. So on Monday, I woke up to some screaming headline that more than 150 members of parliament and called for a kamukunji, and that it was to take place at 10 a.m. Well, usually now we're on recess, Macharia. And on Monday, I should be expected also as an old man not to go to Parliament too early. But now, this was scary. Over 150 members, Chris, 150 members of Parliament are calling for a Kamukunji. This is not, there's no speaker presiding over a house of 349 who will take that lightly. So I am to make my way to Parliament to go and prepare. And I called the clerk, I told him this is very serious. I think what you do, open the chamber, because 150 is too big a number. There's no way that they are going to fit in the members' lobby room. So we opened the chamber around 9, and we waited, and I said, I'm not going to leave the office. When they finally assemble, you can inform me so that they can go and also hear.
Speaker Justin Muturi officially opening the retreat that has brought together the Kenya Editors Guild and legislators. As he says, it is a retreat or a meeting putting heads together in harnessing the symbiotic relationship between the Kenya Editors Guild and, of course, the legislators. And this is for the good of the nation. Again, a lot of conversations coming out of that, and we shall keep you updated on the same. We now take a short break on NTV Today. We'll be back with that conversation, polycystic ovary syndrome. Stay with us. Thank you for staying with NTV Today. My name is Gladys Gachanja. We cross over to Njoro area where there has been renewed clashes amongst those that are living in that area. Some are attributing this to the mal-evictions that are currently going on. And we are informed that this morning there is a heavy police presence in that area, and the county commissioner is actually on ground visiting those affected by the clashes. To give us more details and of course an update on the same is Bridget Ngana, who is in Njoro. Bridget.
Well, Gladys, I'm at Sigoan Academy, and this is just one of the private schools in this area that has been converted into a temporary holding ground for the families that have been displaced in these clashes. This is just a small private school. It doesn't have much facilities in terms of infrastructure. It's just an iron sheet school, but this is where these families have decided to camp because they say that even the public school where they would have been camping is not safe for them. Now, these are estimatedly like 300 families. If you multiply it by the UN number estimate of 5 per family, it's 5 people in a family. It's almost more than 1,000 people who have been camping here. They say they slept quite well. It's kind of safe because even the administration police are within this vicinity, and so the night was rather good. The challenge, Gladys, right now they're facing is that there is no food, and most families are just sitting and waiting and watching. And what I can tell is that even as we are making our way to this place, we were able to see that some houses were still burning, and it's kind of a quagmire of sorts because it's rather a paradox because there is police presence and you can still see some houses still burning. And here we can see that on my left the men are also sitting down contemplating. We understand that they were discussing on how they're going to maybe go back to their homes and try to salvage some of the food that might be there. But the challenge also is that even those destroying these homes are destroying everything. So even if they had stocks of food, stocks of maize, potatoes within their granaries, that is not there. The likelihood of them getting that is not possible. So it's kind of helpless even to watch just men sitting down and contemplating, not knowing what next they're going to do. And the women are just there carrying their children. When we came here, we were approached by some people just trying to find out if we have foodstuffs with us, but unfortunately we didn't carry anything. And so it's kind of heartbreaking also telling somebody that you do not have food, and maybe they spent the night without food, or even whatever they ate is not even enough for them. So Gladys, this is just one of the holding grounds of these displaced people. There are several spread out through this area. There are some also who are camping at Ogiek Neswit Secondary School, but I'm going to speak with one of the elders here at Sigoan Academy. Mzee, nataka tu tuambie majina yako, tueleze mmekaa vipi, jana kulikuwaje usiku, na mnatumai nini itafanyika kwa sababu tunaona pia nyumba bado zinaendelea kuchomeka hata wakati kama sai.
Kwa majina naitwa William Cheborge ambaye ni chairman ya nyumba 10. Kwa kweli hii mambo ilitokea tangu juzi na tukujua ni shida nini. Tunaambia ni mashamba, sio ni catline, lakini mambo ya mashamba catline hapa hatuna shida naye. Imekatwa ureti, hata paka watu ya forest wamepanda miti yao kwa area yao, paka akatupatia ile inaitwa shamba system. Kwa hivyo hatakuwa na shida. Lakini sasa juzi watu walipopumrushwa huko juu, wenzetu walikuja kugeuka na kusema ati tunapigania mambo ya catline. Na si mambo ya catline, tuna shida na serikali. Catline yao waliweka na iko ni mapikon. Kwa hiyo sisi tumeshindwa, wenzetu nini ati mambo ya mashamba, lakini hatakuwa na mambo ya mashamba kwa sababu tuko kwa mashamba tayari. Kwa hivyo sasa hii vita hii ni vita ni kama ya mpango tu ya kupangwa na wengine wale wako na mambo yao ya kinyume ya sheria, kutafutia wengine shida ambaye si ya ukweli. Hata ureti hata vijana zetu, jana DC alikuwa hapa, ikasemekana watu wawache masilaha na vijana zetu tukawacha, amewacha silaha kila kitu, lakini tumestuka usiku yote mpaka hivi leo asubuhi tunaona manyumba pato na watu mapolisi pato wanakimbizana na vijana ya wale wenzetu ambaye tumeshindwa kwa nini hii watu hawezi kutii sheria ya serikali.
Na sasa mnaona kwa polisi wako hapa, lakini hapa mnajua mmekuja tu kuweka kambi yenu kwa ufupi. Wewe ni mzee wa nyumba 10. Najua mna contacts za wa maafisa wa usalama, ma watu wa usalama hata ma chiefs. Kufikia sasa wanasema kuwa hii shida itatatuliwa kwa muda gani na mtaweza kurudi kwa manyumba yenu siku gani?
Sasa ndivyo hapo DC jana alipoongea tukaona kwamba hivi karibuni tutarute makwetu kwa vile sasa security wamekuja, lakini shida ambayo tutatiza hivi leo ni vile tuliona tena still manyumba inachomwa, pato iko manduru, tunasikia maaskari na tumatuma matia gasuko, lakini sisi wenyewe tulitii hiyo sheria na tukaruti kukaa, hata tukaruti kulala manyumba zetu wetu wengine, isipokuwa wengine ni ile woga wako naye angeweza kuruti kwa vile naona manyumba huko pato inachoma, nasikia marisasi huko kidogo, hata tumesikia hata maofisa ya serikali imepigwa mshale. Sasa tukaona watu ikiwa hata napiga mshale watu wa serikali, itakuwa sisi raia itakuwa ni nini? Sasa ndio ilikuwa tunaomba serikali si yenyewe tumeshikilia vijana wetu chini, lakini tungeomba naye wenzetu ama serikali aone sasa kwa nini wenzetu hawezi kututii sheria ya serikali. Hiyo ndio maombi yetu, lakini sisi hii watoto iko hapa, shida iliyoko sasa hapa ni kitu kama njaa. Unajua mtu akubeba, mwingine amechomewa nyumba na chakula yote hata manguo. Sasa ningeomba tu msaada serikali aangalie hata tupatiwe at least kitu hii watoto watakula na mama iko hapa. Kwa sababu hiyo ndio maombi yetu, lakini mambo mengine tumesikiza serikali, hata ile kavi ya jana tulisikiza, ingawa wenzetu hawakusikiza. Tungeomba serikali asitishe hiyo jambo. Kwa hivyo hiyo ni shida yetu ambaye tuko naye, tungesaitiwa, tungeweza kufurahi na tuone. Ili pia unaona hii watoto ni watoto wa shule, tungependa mashule ifunguliwe kwa sababu watoto wengine wanafanya mtihani. Sasa ikiwa tuko hapa, hii watoto wetu watakuja fanya mtihani gani? Kwa hivyo sasa tungeomba ya serikali wasimame, watoto ifungue shule na wamama aruti manyumbani apate kupigia watoto. Kwa hivyo sisi tuko hivyo, maombi yetu ni hiyo, hatuna shida. Kama mambo ya cutline hiyo hatukuwa na shida naye, tuko kwa mashamba. Asante.
Asante sana. That's a really passionate plea by the chairman of the Nyumba 10 here in Sigoan. We are at Sigoan Academy, and this is the vast area that is known as Nesuit, but it stretches into the Mao forest upwards. You can see the boundary of the forest, and they are saying they do not oppose the government's decision to have them move out of the cut line or within the confines of the cut line, but they are still feeling the tension because they are saying that even if they are being told to go back to their homes, they are still not convinced that they'll be safe. And Gladys, just as he mentioned, we do understand that security operation also spoke about there being a curfew here in this area, but not everyone has adhered to that curfew. So later on, we're going to be speaking with the county commissioner, possibly, because he said he's going to speak with the media after he has seen this humanitarian situation in the ground. So we will be expecting that he's going to answer to some of these key questions on how these families are going to go back to their homes, how they're going to access food, because as of yesterday, the Red Cross said it had activated some of its service men and women or its officers on the ground, but we don't know if they have been able to come to this area. One of the things is that it's a very expansive area. The road network is not that good, and also the security issue is also present for those who are just coming here, not just journalists, but also anyone who might want to come into this area. You need to know where exactly you need to go because it's still a tense area. Some houses are still burning even now, but we do believe that the presence of the county commissioner here is also going to put this matter to rest maybe sooner than we think, Gladys.
Thank you. Bridget Sangana speaking to us from Sigouan Academy, which is in the larger Nesuit region that has been affected by those clashes in the Njoro area. And as she has said, there is a humanitarian crisis as we speak. Those that have been affected and displaced from their homes do not have food and supplies, and they are asking, as you heard from them, for the government to intervene so that their children can go back to school, for those who are actually facing exams, and of course for their children and women to go back home so that they can be able to fend for themselves and get something to eat. We are always going to be keeping that eye on that situation and bringing you the latest as and when we receive it. Now back to our PCOS conversation this morning, polycystic ovary syndrome. And for those that are joining us now, just a brief overview. It is a hormonal disorder causing enlarged ovaries with small cysts on the outer edges. Cause not very clear, but it's attributed to both genetic and environmental factors. Symptoms: menstrual irregularity, excess hair growth, acne, obesity, and its treatment methods vary. And we'll be talking to the doctor, of course, the gynecologist, Mr. Wanjohi, and Beatrice, who is living with PCOS. I mean, Daktari, or maybe let me start with Beatrice, because that's where we were before we went to the coast. Beatrice, you were saying there was somebody who was asking, does PCOS affect normal pregnancy, normal childbirth, and a healthy baby?
It doesn't. And my second born, I had the smoothest pregnancy, I can say. No morning sickness, nothing, until 8th month, when I experienced severe yeast infection.
Okay.
Till the date of delivery, I struggled with it for 7 days before the delivery. But this pregnancy was smooth, gave birth to a healthy baby.
Yes.
A very genius girl.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So there is hope in having, conceiving and actually having a normal pregnancy. And this is something that has also been alluded to somebody who's been following the conversation. And they're saying there is hope for those living with PCOS because his wife actually lived with it. And now they have a bouncing baby boy. That is actually Stan K, who says, my wife was diagnosed with PCOS, but she was able to conceive. And now we have a 7-month baby girl, thanks to the assistance of a gynecologist. Now, Daktari, that we've alleviated the fear that there could be an issue or affect the birth and the pregnancy of children actually born out of people that are born from people living with PCOS. But the question here is, when it comes to the symptoms, some of those that she actually touched on is the fact that she deals with depression. Is that something that has to do with the hormonal imbalance, or is it just generally the fact that you have to live with this syndrome that you do not understand?
No, it's not because of the hormonal imbalance. The depression is a consequence of the manifestation of polycystic ovarian syndrome. One, it causes infertility. It's a major issue in polycystic ovarian syndrome. So there's that frustration of not able to conceive. Two, there's an increase in obesity, and we have said hirsutism, increase in hair. There's acne. And all those factors actually cause depression. There's that issue of low self-esteem. That's what causes the depression. So it's not the hormonal manifestation, but actually it is actually the manifestation of the disease itself that causes one to feel depressed and worthless. Especially, this also will apply to those people who are not able to conceive. In infertility, they get really stressed, and some of them get depressed.
Okay. Now, Beatrice, you had a question to the doctor, in as far as you having your ovarian drilling, it leading to regular menses, but you still did not conceive.
Yeah.
Daktari, what was the issue here? Shouldn't one lead to another?
Yeah, precisely. When you have polycystic ovarian syndrome and ovarian drilling is done, actually almost 80–90% of the couples will conceive, but sometimes that does not occur. The biggest challenge we have with the polycystic ovarian syndrome also is the quality of the oocyte. The quality of the egg is affected to some extent. So the conception may be still slightly difficult. Two, there's slightly increase in chances of having a miscarriage. Some people may not realize if the miscarriage occurs very early. The pregnancy will be normal if it does occur. So those are the factors which can affect actually conception. That actually sometimes everything is functioning well, but that quality of the egg, the oocyte, is not very good. So fertilization may not occur, and if fertilization occurs, the quality of the embryo may not be as good as somebody who doesn't have polycystic ovarian syndrome. Okay. And that applies again to even those who undergo in vitro fertilization, IVF, and have polycystic ovarian syndrome. The chances of conception is less than the people who do not have the polycystic ovarian syndrome.
Now, Beatrice, living with PCOS and having all the symptoms, hair growth, trying to conceive, and that was hard for you, but at least the losing weight helped you conceive. Did you have a support system in all this? Did the people around you understand what you had to deal with or what you have to deal with?
The only person can say understand me is my mom. Even my husband, I've tried to explain to him, today I'm not feeling this, today I have abdominal pain. So the only person who can understand me is my mom, very clearly. Because sometimes you may find yourself crying out of nothing. Even a small thing in the house, a baby can make you cry. Yeah.
Is that the depression manifesting?
I think.
Yeah. Okay.
So it tends to, many people do not understand what we go through. Because for me, by then I was a housewife, so I had no job. The bill is huge, especially managing PCOS is not an easy thing. I think even the pressure from the both families, you know, you get married, you just have one daughter, you have no other child, then you take long to conceive. So you try to tell them, maybe I've gone down everything I have done ECG, all medical tests, you have given Clomid and whatever to boost the fertility, but nothing happened. So it turned that sometimes you are blamed. Yes. And it came to a point I even moved out of my house because the pressure was too much. That's when I conceived the second born. Yeah.
Okay.
And it was I can say the pregnancy was very smooth. Apart from the 8 months where I experienced bleeding, in case I do some outchores and whatever, I had to experience bleeding. But it was contained, and the yeast.
The infection.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, Daktari, she mentioned or touched on the fact that this is a costly affair, managing PCOS. Talk to us about that and what the options are.
The options of treating polycystic ovarian syndrome, sometimes it's just the symptoms that we treat, because some will just manifest with acne, and we are going to address the issue of acne, which can be treated with the drugs. Sometimes manifestation may be hirsutism, increased hair growth. It can't be treated medically. Either you have to shave, you have to use depilatory creams, or you may have to undergo laser treatment. So that can be quite frustrating, because again, laser treatment is very, very expensive. But most of the people who manifest with polycystic ovarian syndrome, the problem is infertility. They're not able to conceive, and that's why they present to the doctor most of the time. And we have said before, if the body mass index, they have overweight or obesity, then losing weight actually can cause conception to occur. Like she has said before, she just lost weight and she conceived, as we have said. Because when you lose weight, the male hormones, the androgens, tend to go down. If that can't happen again, we can give fertility drugs, because the problem is the egg is not coming out. The mothers are not ovulating. Those women who have polycystic ovarian syndrome are not ovulating. The egg is not coming out. So giving fertility drugs like clomiphene or letrozole do improve on that. And again, we have said that those who are obese, insulin is a factor, what you call insulin resistant. So sometimes we give actually diabetic drugs, oral hypoglycemic, they do help in that improving the environment, and conception can occur. If the worst comes the worst, then again we can do surgery, what we call laparoscopic surgery, where we drill the ovaries, we puncture holes on the ovaries. Puncturing holes is just to cause the ovary tissue, we burn ovarian tissue to reduce the amount of androgens, the male hormones being produced by the ovary. That's what we actually do. That becomes very expensive, especially laparoscopy, because when you look at this country, the public hospitals which can perform laparoscopic surgery, I think, is just Kenyatta National Hospital and Moi Eldoret, a bit of Kisumu, and maybe Mombasa. The other hospitals don't do. So you can imagine those people who are in the peripheral areas, they have to be referred to to these hospitals if they're relying on the public hospitals. So majority of the people have to rely on private hospitals, and that becomes very, very expensive. Yeah. So those are the challenges we do face. And that consultation, regular consultation, medication, cumulatively becomes very, very expensive.
Okay, and
maybe to add on that, I would just like to say that when you go to the developed world, and maybe you're heading there, you have PCOS societies where the professionals come together and see how can they tackle this issue of polycystic ovarian syndrome society. We don't have that, maybe sooner or later. And of course, we have PCOS support groups. Like you can see the frustrations she undergone. The spouses, the partners, the societies don't understand what people are going. So sometimes we have support group and people come together and support each other, and they go with the spouses and the family, so they realize it's not that particular person to blame, it's just the condition itself which needs just to be addressed. Yeah.
Again, information is power.
Yes.
For you, Beatrice, are you part of the support group, people who've walked with you because they understand they've had similar experiences, or, you know, something like that?
No, currently we don't have one, but we have Facebook groups where we share our ideas, and a WhatsApp group. We encourage each other. And I think through that group, sometimes you get solace there.
Yeah.
And comfort. And maybe short of ideas, if you are going something and you can't access the doctor, then we ask each other in the Facebook or the WhatsApp group.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And has it helped in getting people enlightened and also to know who to go to in case you're dealing with something?
Yes, it has. Now the major problem is not the people with PCOS. It's the people around the people with PCOS.
Aha.
Yes.
Okay.
Because I have PCOS, I have all symptoms and whatever. But you, as my partner, you can't understand what I'm going through.
Yeah.
So you get some women are being thrown out of the house just because the partner does not understand what the woman is going through.
Yeah.
So it tends to have that. Yes, the group helps a lot. But you hear many women complaining, I'm being out of my marriage because of this. So the depression has increased to women.
Yes.
Yes, and I think the awareness should be put.
Okay, she raises a good point. It's not about people living with a PCOS, it's the people around them.
Yes.
I mean, as a doctor, are there things that maybe you're putting together to ensure that there's sensitization around PCOS?
I think the most critical, that creating awareness, we have not been very effective in this country. One of the biggest challenges we have, especially in Africa, is the key manifestation of polycystic ovarian syndrome. Why people complain is infertility. Funding infertility has been a big challenge because most of the programs in the government public sector are funded by donors. When you talk to the donors about funding infertility, they say you don't have a problem with fertility, you have a problem actually overproduction. So you don't get any funding. When we go to the government, the infertility does not cause pain, it does not hurt, although it has psychological trauma.
Yes.
The government doesn't fund. We have tried in Kenyatta National Hospital to set up an infertility center, Kenyatta National Hospital. We have not received support at all, and to have an IVF group. That's where the problem comes in, that we don't have any national organization or any support to support infertility. And 90% of the patients who cannot ovulate actually have PCOS. You see how so it's a major issue, so it can be addressed through that forum. However, what we normally encourage as doctors is a patient presents to us and we discover PCOS, we like to approach it from a couple point of view. We like the husband to come there and we explain the problem, and we try to support them so as they can be able to understand, especially when it entails infertility.
Okay, now Dr. this is a question that is directed to you. When it comes to miscarriages, if somebody has had several of them, would it be time for them to see a PCOS specialist?
There are many factors which can cause recurrent miscarriages, but PCOS can be one of them. Actually, it may be able to cause because of the hormonal issues. When conception occurs, there's a hormone called progesterone, which is produced by the ovary, by corpus luteum. The formation of the corpus luteum tends to be poor in the patient who have PCOSs. So they should see a gynecologist actually who is going to evaluate all the other factors, because the other factors which can be able to cause miscarriages. So it's PCOS, then it's very manageable. But however, if I get a patient who has PCOS and she conceives either naturally or through fertility drugs, then we give them the first 3 months, we are going to give them support, hormonal support, to make sure miscarriage does not occur.
Okay, now Beatrice mentioned the fact that she was misdiagnosed a lot before she even understood what it is she had to live with. Are all gynecologists equipped enough to understand when to look out for PCOS?
No, I would say yes and no, because I myself am a fertility specialist with a master's from University of Leeds, UK. That actually PCOS would entail management of infertility, which is a sub-speciality. So there's a general gynecology, then you're going to specialize in infertility, which will entail PCOS. So it's not true that all of gynecology entail. However, because of the shortage of fertility specialists in this country, it's still advisable for somebody to see a gynecologist. There are very few fertility specialists here.
Okay. Now, I am informed that we have a caller who would like to chime in into the conversation or even ask a question. Remember, if you can reach us, if you want to talk to us, you can reach us through the numbers on your screen. Jackie from Homa Bay, what is your question?
I had a problem. Yeah, it's a case I've been having regular, menstruation zangu inakwanga not stable as such. You know? Not stable as such. So there is a day I went to Homa Bay. We have a gynecologist called Mr. Ondigo. When I went there, I went over a test, or this is called the ultrasound. They told me that thing is okay, and then there is a second test nilienda after menstruation yangu. So after that, they gave me some medicines called lastrozole. Of course, I was supposed to take them after the second day after my menstruation. The first minute goes like that, and another second menstruation come. I was supposed to take for in the second day of my menstruation. So I've not seen anything coming as if I can conceive. So my question was, should I continue going for this dose, or can I stop taking it and look for another drug?
Okay. Thank you, Jackie, for your question. And of course, if you have any questions to the doctor or even to Beatrice, you can reach us through the numbers on your screen. Daktari, you've had her question. What would be your advice?
My advice is infertility is a very complex condition because it can be multifactorial. It doesn't mean that someone who has polycystic ovarian syndrome does not have another condition which can cause infertility. It does not mean man does not have a problem. We see actually, like in the developed world, the issue of the infertility is 50% male, 50% female. In our society, it tends to be slightly female because of the tubal factors. So she needs proper evaluation. She needs to evaluate especially tubal factors, that the tube's blocked. Because saying just PCOS is not alone, you need to evaluate in totality what is causing that infertility. You need to evaluate whether there's a tubal blockage, whether there are uterine fibroids, whether there is a hormonal profile, and see what is the problem, and analyze the male at the same time before now you make the decision what to do. Yeah, letrozole is a standard drug if it's PCOS which is causing. Again, conception does not occur in the first cycle. You need to take this medication for at least 6 months to say it has failed. So if everything was done right and she's taken this drug 1 or 2 cycles, she needs to do it for 6 cycles before she says it has failed.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Now, a question to Beatrice. You spoke about losing weight, and that's when you successfully conceived. Now, somebody is saying they've been struggling with the same. They try to lose the weight, but they cannot maintain the weight where it's supposed to be. So what have you done, or what has worked for you?
I can't say, because the first month, the first pregnancy, which is the second one, I think I lost weight. Then it took a duration of 4 months before I conceived. Then this came as a miracle, I can't say. Yeah. Because it came once I lost weight, but I managed to lose 10 kg. That was June this year, and that's when I conceived. I think maintaining the weight is a challenge. Because for me, I don't reduce weight. I reduce the size of the body. But the weight remains. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Daktari, speak on that issue. Is the losing weight part and parcel of everything that comes with PCOS, or is this varying from one person to another due to genetic predisposition?
It will vary from one individual to the other one. And as you have said, the PCOS is caused by many factors. It's not only just obesity. So it could be other factors, could be genetic factors. And losing weight, again, It's not always easy, first of all. It's quite difficult, and it will depend from one individual to the other one. Some people may have very difficult in losing weight because constitution is the way their bodies are, is their genetic makeup, so it becomes very difficult. And those are the people now will, on top of that, put them on medical treatment to cause the ovulation to occur or to treat the PCOS.
Okay, and another question to Daktari. Does contraception contribute to PCOS?
No, contraception does not contribute to PCOS.
I think the question is coming from the fact that you said if the ovaries are not producing ovaries as often as they should, it should be an issue going forward in as far as how your body translates it. So is there any relation?
No, the contraceptives do not cause PCOS to occur. If anything, we can use the oral contraceptive pills to regulate the periods if it's very, very mild. Because when you give oral contraceptives, they consist actually of the hormone called estrogen and progesterone. And then they tend to reduce the amount of the estrogens, progesterone produced by the body, and also the male hormones which is produced by the body. So actually they can, one, regulate your periods, because people who end up with the endometrial cancer is because they don't get their periods. So if you get your periods every month, you're not going to get endometrial carcinoma cancer. So the pills can be used for mild PCOS just to regulate your periods, especially in those who do not want to conceive. Yeah, but it doesn't cause PCOS to occur.
And another question, do we have more cases of PCOS now than there was before?
Yes, indeed we do have, because we have said PCOS can be genetic or can be environmental. What is happening to our weight? We are getting more and more fat, we are getting more obese, and we say obesity is a factor in our society. In earlier days, we used to be much smaller. So there's that issue of our diet, our lifestyle contributing to obesity, which eventually may contribute to PCOS. The female body is geared towards the reproduction, to having children. That's how it is meant to be. So for those who get children early and get slightly more children, they're less likely to get PCOS, because that's how the body is supposed to function.
Wait, say that again. The earlier you get a child and the more you get,
the less likely to get PCOS. You get it, because that's the hormonal issues tend to be more corrected when you conceive. You've had this issue notion that if your periods are very regular, or the periods are very painful, and if you get a child, then the periods may become more regular and less painful. That is absolutely true, because there's hormonal correction itself. The body tends to correct itself.
Okay, now in the case of Beatrice, her firstborn she had when she was 17. Then why didn't it work for her?
You see, the polycystic ovarian syndrome is multifactorial. Yes. It does not apply. It's not a rule that what is applied to all doesn't apply to all. So it will depend from one individual to the other one.
Okay, now Beatrice, I guess the question here would be, when it comes to the cost of dealing with treating PCOS, how have you been able to deal with it? I mean, it is quite a burden on you.
It is quite, and very challenging, because most insurance does not cover. But the good thing, I had a company doctor where my husband used to work. Before we stopped, it came to a point now he said, no, the insurance cannot cover here. So here you have to pay cash, because now the insurance does not cover infertility. Now we have dealt with the PCOS, now the cyst, it has reduced to size, to the normal size. But now if you want a baby, you have to pay cash. So we chipped in for 1 month, then it came to a point I was not unable to afford. So we withdrew the treatment, because medicine, you have to go for appointment at least twice per month, the diet, so it became costly for me.
Okay. Now, Dr. she touches on something very vital here. You touched on the fact that there are very few hospitals that can help along with the process. But then again, if you have an insurance card and it doesn't really help you much, I mean, what would be some of the solutions maybe that can be put in place so that people can get the treatment they need?
I think the biggest challenge you have in this country, the insurance do not cover infertility at all, aspects. That we need NHIF again, depends on what cover you have. They'll just cover the bed charges. They're not going to cover the daily consultations. So actually the frustration sets in that it should be a policy that these people should be incorporated in Either insurance cover, especially when you're talking about having a national insurance cover, this should be incorporated into that. And maybe NHIF should be incorporated actually to see how they can assist these people. Because the treatment is very expensive, as she has said. It may entail surgery, it may require admission to the hospital, and the worst case, it may require actually in vitro fertilization, which costs 500,000. And then what you have said before is getting foundations which can be able to support, because even in Europe, treating infertility and America is very expensive, but there are foundations which help. You have fertility foundations which tend to help, and some of them are actually government foundations, and other they are private foundations, and organizations which actually can help this one. That's the way we can approach this condition.
I know you said that there is no cure to PCOS.
No, there is no cure to PCOS.
Is there any chance that the syndrome can go away on its own?
Yes.
How?
We don't know. Because some people will present with the PCOS and it just regress on its own. It can't regress on its own without even without any pregnancy, it just regress on its own. We don't know its cause of this disease, and we don't understand it yet. That's where the challenge is coming. Even making diagnosis, when you come to the international level, there are various organizations who make different criteria for diagnosis of this disease. So actually it can just go and regress on its own without any medical intervention.
And is there a chance you can live with PCOS without knowing you have it?
Yeah, you can live with PCOS, especially when it's in a mild form, because what will happen is somebody will just keep periods. 2 to 3 months you don't get your periods, and they come again. In fact, most people realize they have PCOS when they come to conception. They cannot conceive. That's the wonder, why aren't we conceiving?
Yeah.
And you come when the doctor realizes that actually when all the workup is done for infertility, you realize the problem is PCOS. Others, for those who don't want to conceive, they can live without any disease. But the problem is the progression of the disease. We know this disease can progress into diabetes mellitus, frank diabetes mellitus, can progress into heart disease, can progress into endometrial carcinoma, or it can cause what you call metabolic syndrome, where you have actually the heart disease and the diabetes mellitus and polycystic ovarian syndrome. Yeah, and that's therefore indirectly. Normally PCOS will not kill, but when it goes to diabetes and goes into ischemic, goes to heart disease, then it can end up killing. Not directly, but indirectly.
Wow. All right. Maybe in closing, Beatrice, as somebody who's had to live with this syndrome and, you know, the challenges that come with it and even the treatment of the same, what would be the clarion call, maybe to policymakers, to doctors, insurance companies, people who live around people with PCOS? What's your clarion call to them?
My call would be for the society and the government to consider the patients, because without insurance, without cash, because no insurance cannot cover. So at least they include that in the NHF, because a common mwananchi can afford the NHF. So you find many women can't assess. For me, I was unable and I overcame it. But there are some people who are unable to assess, because seeing Dr. Wanyike is not 1,000. So I can't even afford my fare from my place to his place. So how? But at least with an insurance, NHF, he can go to a private, the nearest government hospital, then they can refer the patient from there. And with a referral letter, patient can assess easily.
Okay.
Then another thing is the society to understand the patient. Before you judge somebody, please try to learn to see what is she going through. Many women are committing suicide, like me, I tried committing suicide.
Oh.
Because the pressure is too much, depression hits, the medical bills, sometimes you look at your medicine, you have to swallow all this, and you are not sick. So you say, life is too short, you'd rather die than suffer. Yeah.
It is a rough road to walk on. Okay, Daktari, your parting words for something that clearly is very important, something that needs to be looked into, and now with health being part of the pillars of the Big Four agenda for the government, and this being a devolved unit, what is your parting shot?
I think the first message actually to the women or to the ladies is actually menses. Regular menses shows your reproductive system is very good. If you're not getting regular menses for any reason, you stay 2 to 3 months, you don't get your periods, sometimes you stay 6 months, you're not getting your periods, or you're getting periods more frequently, 2 or 3 times in a month, it's a sign something is not right somewhere. you need to see a doctor. But we take it for granted because you're not sick. As she has said, you're not absolutely not sick, but you're not getting your periods for 3 months, then you stay another 3 months. But it's a sign your reproductive system has a problem, either at the ovary level, either at the uterus level, or actually could be sometimes in the what you call hypothalamus pituitary, in the brain level. So you need to see a doctor, the message. Now some of the diseases, when you intervene early, they're correctable, but if you wait for too long, it's not possible to correct it, you know. Like PCOS, if we realize much early, we can advise you modify your lifestyle. Try and get your children early because this condition may get worse. That's one to the general public. And of course, what she has said is when infertility occurs, is a couple issue, is not a female issue. As I've said, like in the developed world, 50% of the in 50% of the couples who cannot conceive, the man who has a problem. So infertility is a couple problem and it's a society problem, especially in society because we love to have children and these children take care of us. And two is at the government level. I am a senior lecturer at the University of Nairobi. I work in Kenyatta National Hospital. We have actually urged the government to set up an infertility center, the public ones, and nobody is really bothered because infertility does not pain. It's not a major national issue, but it's very stressful and has psychological trauma. And you have said people actually try to commit suicide. You remember the case which we had in Machakos where somebody's hands was chopped. Is the major problem. We don't have clear data, but I would say almost 15 to 20% of the couples you see in Kenya have a problem in fertility. We are talking about for every 5 people you see, most likely 1 couple has a problem in fertility. But the problem that you don't get sick, it doesn't hurt, it doesn't pain. You know, we ignore it and we just assume people don't want to have children. You get the point? So at the national level, we need, especially in the Kenyatta, we need to set up an infertility center which will incorporate an IVF, because the ultimate treatment of the PCOS, if it doesn't work in fertility, is to in vitro fertilization. Right now, all the centers which do in vitro fertilization are private. There's not even a single one which is public.
That is sad.
It's a sad affair. And on the other hand, you go in Uganda, they're setting up a public IVF center. Zambia has, and those countries have less gross domestic product than this country. Even small country like Eritrea is trying to set one. But you have tried to address this issue. The government or the relevant authority don't want to get to the root of the problem, that there's a problem here called infertility.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Wanyoike Gishohe, a gynecologist and fertility expert, Beatrice Kathure, who is living with PCOS. Thank you for your time. And clearly, as stated, infertility is an issue in this country. Policymakers, those in the healthcare, stakeholders need to understand that there needs to be resources set aside to help those that have to live with some of these challenges and also invest in the same. Well, that has been a conversation around polycystic ovary syndrome. PCOS is what we call it. And of course, I can see that conversation going on Twitter. Please, let's continue to engage. If you'd like to reach out to any of our panelists, you can, and you can let me know on Twitter at Gladys_Gachanja at NTV Kenya. Well, we take a short break right here on NTV Today. I'll be back with the day's top stories at 1 p.m. Thank you for staying with NTV Today. My name is Gladys Gachanja and this is your 1 p.m. update. Now, President Uhuru Kenyatta rejected the Finance Bill 2018 late Thursday, putting to rest the ongoing stalemate over the 16% VAT on fuel. The president is currently at State House, Nairobi, to give an address regarding the matter, and we shall be crossing over to State House as soon as he starts addressing that. But for now, tension is high in Marioshoni in Nakuru County after more than 30 houses were torched last night. Molo Deputy County Commissioner David Wanyonyi said the arson attacks are being carried out by two rival communities living in the area. Local leaders said a gang of youth descended on villages, setting houses on fire, with some reportedly taking advantage of a situation to loot property. Clashes erupted after a boundary dispute, which the communities living in the area keep fighting for. Police have been deployed in the area to maintain law and order. At the same time, residents have been urged to keep calm as the matter is being resolved. Elsewhere, 3 men who are said to have caused the death of Likuyani Member of Parliament Enoch Kibunguchi's driver have been released on a bond of 1 million shillings each. Peter Kinothia Minor, Cyrus Amwai Ganani and Peter Abulamaga were arraigned before Eldoret Chief Magistrate Charles Obolutse and were charged with robbery with violence. They also denied the charges. Now, all the accused persons were arrested in Joro within Nakuru County by detectives from Kakamega County, including officers from the Directorate of Criminal Investigations. Detectives tracked the suspects through a mobile phone that had been stolen from the MP during the Likuyani shooting incident that caused the MP's driver Douglas Wakacha's death. Peter Abulumaga was charged with another count of being in possession of stolen property. The case will be heard on the 1st of October.
Bernard. It was
To Meru County, and the family of a 16-year-old boy in Igembe, Meru County, is calling for justice for their son who was allegedly murdered by the neighbor over claims of theft. Ken Koome was accused of stealing miraa from the neighbor's farm. The case has been handed over to the Directorate of Criminal Investigations.
The somber mood in Kula village, Igembe North Sub-County, was almost palpable. Saturday dawned with the sad news of death. 16-year-old Ken Koome was murdered in the village, having been accused of theft by a neighbor. The neighbor claims he stole miraa from the farm. His family now unable to come to grips with the loss of their loved one.
Tulikuwa tukienda kuona ndio tukakuta sisi tukiwa na sistangu wanamulika na hakuna mtu mwingine alikuwa kwa barabara. Tukawaona tukaanza kukimbia pande ya lami. Sasa ndio kukaa sisi tukaanza kulia hapo akiwa amelala na sisi tumeketi hapo.
According to the family, the deceased was hardworking and had no history of theft.
Ken hakuwa mtu mwenye tabia mbaya. Ken hajazoea wizi. Ken ni mtu kufanya kazi. Huwa anafanya kazi yake tangu amalize class 8. Huwa anahaswa anapata ya kutumia. Sasa sikuona sababu ya muue na ni majirani.
The family is now crying for justice for the slain kin from the authorities. Police are investigating the incident. Melmiendo, NTV.
Across the borders, conflict on Africa's Great Lakes has been attributed to fish shortage, while rights to fishing is causing a strained relationship between Kenya and Uganda on the island of Migingo on Lake Victoria. The situation is the same on or between Uganda and the DRC. Kampala has stepped up patrols in recent months to crack down on illegal fishing on Lakes Edward and Albert.
Ugandan Navy speedboats slashed through murky Lake Edward towards a fleet of wooden canoes carrying what is believed to be fishermen engaging on these waters illegally. The missions have led to the arrest of hundreds of Congolese fishermen and sent tensions soaring between the two countries, whose armed forces engaged in deadly clashes on Lake Edward, the smallest of the Great Lakes of Eastern Africa, in July.
After seeing that there was the trend of illegal fishing had gone high, and he decided to protect the resource which would help the government in terms of revenue and boost the economy.
Both lakes lie mostly in Congolese territory, where uncontrolled fishing has depleted stocks, driving fishermen into Ugandan waters, where officials are now clamping down on overfishing.
Our waters are shallow, their waters are deep. So most of the fish is from this end of this lake.
A Congolese Fishing Association has accused Ugandan troops of arbitrarily arresting fishermen and shaking them down for money. In the latest incident, Ugandan authorities this week denied killing 4 Congolese fishermen whose bound and bullet-riddled bodies were found floating in Lake Edward. According to Lieutenant Colonel James Nuwagaba, a commander of the Lake Edward operation, the first 200 fishermen who were arrested pleaded guilty and were released, but some of those that were pardoned and sent back returned to Ugandan waters. With no choice but to surrender to these Ugandan Marines, this pair is taken ashore and handed over to police. They are the latest to be detained in a Ugandan clampdown on illegal fishing, which has led to the arrest of over 400 Congolese fishermen.
Back home, 11 members of parliament from the coast region led by their chairman Sambweni MP Suleiman Dori have vowed to forge a jointed front ahead of the 2022 general elections. The leaders have accused successive regimes of taking advantage of their divisions to economically neglect the region. The MPs include Ali Wario of Garsen, Mundanyi MP Danson Moshako, Ali Mbogo representing Kisauni, Lamus Sharif Athman and Stanley Muthama, as well as Tana River Senator Juma Wario.
Viongozi wote wa pwani ni lazima tushikane sote pamoja kwa ajili ya maendeleo ya mtu wa pwani. Wakati wa kujaza vikapu vya watu wengine umekwisha.
Tumesema matatizo ni mengi, tumeungana kama wapwani. Liwe liwalo, lakini safari hii Mwenyezi Mungu anapotujalia ni lazima serikali inaoundwa 2022 mpwani awe yuko ndani.
Kwa muda mrefu tumeeka mapenzi yetu katika vyama, na wakati huu ni lazima tutoe mapenzi yetu kwa vyama, tuweke mapenzi yetu katika maslahi yetu ya jimbo la Pwani.
Health matters now. Women suffering from fistula in the country have continued to suffer in silence due to stigma. The latest report by the United Nations Population Fund shows that 3,000 cases of obstetric fistula occur in Kenya every year, with about 1 or 2 fistula cases accounting for every 1,000 deliveries.
In Kibomet, Kitale town, we meet with Gladys Gachanja, a mother of 5 who has been suffering from fistula.
Nilianza kugojeka hii ugonjwa wa fistula 1999 wakati nilikuwa najifungua mtoto wangu wa mwisho. Na wakati huo nilipofanywa operation, nilipoamuka nilipata mkojo iko ina.
Gachanja says her condition comes with a lot of challenges that have greatly affected her.
Nikifanya kazi huko chini ninasikia itaweza kufunguka tena. Kuna ile muda tulikuwa tumepewa ya kukaa bila kufanya kazi mzito, maana ukifanya kazi tena igerudi.
Janet Nangabo, Trans Nzoia women representative, has petitioned the government to set up a fund for women struggling with the condition.
Huo mjadala ule nilipeleka katika bunge, nilikuwa nasi kwamba serikali itenge pesa za kushughulikia hawa wamama.
Statistics from the Ministry of Health in Trans Nzoia County show that a significant number of women suffer from fistula, but most do so in silence.
Hawa wamama hawawezi kutembea kutoka nyumbani kwao wafike katika centers zenye ziko mbali kwa sababu ya hiyo hali yao, na wenda ikawa hata wakisema wachukue magari zenye ziko na abiria inaleta shida kwa sababu hawa maabiria hawatavumilia hiyo harufu ile hawa wagonjwa wako nazo.
The woman representative also wants the government to set up training centers that will help empower women suffering from fistula and also create awareness campaigns on how to manage the condition. Winnie Maganga, NTV.
Now, a 4-year-old girl is nursing serious head and hand injuries at Kerugoya County Referral Hospital. The injuries were inflicted by her father at their home in Kageo town. According to the child's mother, Martha Wanjiko, there was a domestic quarrel with her husband when he came home from a night out. She managed to escape with 2 of their children, but the young girl who was left behind bore the brunt of his anger. Wanjiko says this is not the first time he has been violent towards her, but it's the first time he is channeling his anger to his children. The man who was attacked by neighbors after this latest incident is said to have once before stabbed his wife thrice, but she forgave him and went back to the matrimonial home.
Akamwaga chakula, nikamuuliza amwaga chakula kwa nini watoto wasiende shule, akaanza kutupiga sisi na watoto wangu wawili, tukatoroka juu alikuwa na kipanga.
Zile aliingia huko kwa nyumba akagongesha panga, wakalia kidogo alafu akanyamaza. Alafu saa zile alianzia kukatakata katoto, akakatakata katoto alafu akatoka. Akakatoka kakakaa hapa nje.
Really sad state of affairs. Now to security matters again. Armed bandits from Uganda who had stolen animals from Kotido in Uganda and crossed with them to Kenya were arrested, and the stolen animals recovered by an administrator in Urum, Loima Sub-County, Turkana. Loima Sub-County Assistant Chief Stephen Lorot said he came across a group of 6 Ugandan men from the Jia community driving their animals from Kotido via Loima, and upon questioning them, 3 of them escaped. The 3 who were left behind were later arrested and the animals recovered. Their suspects were detained at an AP camp in Lokiriama before being handed over to the UPDF of Uganda for further questioning. Area residents decry the increasing cases of cattle rustling, calling upon security agencies to patrol the porous borders. Well, to something that we shall be bringing you live. Tharaka Nithi County Government and the NHIF have been partnering with the county governments to increase member registration as a means of attaining universal health coverage. Now, as such, Tharaka Nithi County will be launching universal health coverage today, and that is an event that we shall be bringing to you live. And actually, to give us more details on the same is our reporter Melita Oletenges. Melita.
A very good afternoon to you, Gladys. We are at Tharaka Nithi County. We are coming to you actually from Mumbuni Dispensary. It's in Maara constituency. Now, Gladys, what is happening here today is that there is the launch of universal health coverage here, and over 10,000 citizens are living within Tharaka Nithi County are expected to be registered today, and already the process has started. We've seen a number of residents working here and actually have been registered with NHIF. Now, Gladys, what is of great interest today here is that the universal health coverage is one among the 4 agendas by the Jubilee government, and what is happening here today is that NHIF has been to a number of counties, and number 1 NHIF was in Kajiado County just recently, and it launched the universal healthcare there in what was called Mbuzi Moja Afya Bora, and today they are here in Tharaka Nithi County, and what they intend to achieve is that universal healthcare as a whole intends to achieve affordable healthcare for residents living within this county and with them not incurring any particular financial crisis. Now, what is happening is that the governor for Tharaka Nithi County, Muthomi Njuki, has already arrived here in the company of the CEO NHIF, Geoffrey Mwangi. And what we'll be keen to look at today is that we will be looking at what the government is doing in terms of ensuring that the residents here actually access the medical facilities. And what we will be looking at, we'll be looking at what they're doing in terms of building more health facilities. We'll be looking at what they're doing in acquiring equipment. Remember, most of the residents in such counties have to travel vast distances in order to access medical attention. But we will be keeping a keen eye on that. And what also we'll be looking, Gladys, is at what NHIF is doing to ensure that these costs incurred by patients also are able to fit in this sponsored NHIF cover by the county government. Remember, we've had counties having financial constraints here, and we will be looking at what NHIF is doing to ensure that this NHIF cover goes hand in hand with the sponsorship by the government. Remember, we've seen other counties such as Makueni and Kitui devising their own health cards, and we're also interviewing the CEO later on just to get you the details on that. But for now, we'll be keeping a tabs here, Gladys. But for now, back to you.
Thank you, Melita Oletenge, speaking to us from Tharaka Nithi County, where the county government and with the NHIF have been partnering to actually increase member registration as a means of attaining universal health coverage. Of course, as I mentioned earlier, we shall be bringing to you that event live right after this bulletin. Now, our primary school in Taita Taveta County, in conjunction with Sauti ya Wanawake, has started an ambitious agricultural project with pupils. Now, the program involves teaching pupils on how to adopt new agricultural technology that fits the area, which is semi-arid. Already 25 pupils from Kishushe Primary School are part of a program that was funded by Action Aid at a tune of 80,000 shillings. The chairperson of the Sauti ya Wanawake, Mary Seleka, has enlightened many residents on sun culture agriculture, which can work well in the area. The use of sun culture technique involves digging trenches, laying a dam liner before covering the trench with soil and manure mixture. The dam liner prevents water from being absorbed into the ground, and hence it will be available for the plants.
Watoto wakati wanaendelea na elimu pia wapate na elimu ya nini, ya ukulima. Na ndio tukaongea na hao partners wetu, wakakubali, tukakuja kwa walimu, tukaketi na wao, tukapata mwalimu ambaye atakuwa kwa kituwakilisha, ndio tukamwambia tuanze na hii first lot ya 25 members.
Tumeweza kufanya program ya kwanza, tukapanda tomato, na hizo tulipata tuweza kuuza, ama kwa kilo tulizopata ni kama kilo 40. Na pesa tulizopata tulipata 4,000, na sasa hii tumebadilisha hiyo program tukapanda sukuma.
Across the borders again, South Sudan's President Salva Kiir signed a peace agreement with rebel leader Riek Machar in the Ethiopian capital Addis Ababa to end a civil war that has killed at least 50,000 people, displaced 2 million, and held up the country's progress since it gained independence 7 years ago. Now, South Sudan plunged into warfare 2 years after independence from Sudan in 2011, when a political dispute between Kiir and the then Vice President Riek Machar erupted into armed confrontation. A previous peace deal signed in 2015 fell apart a year later after clashes broke out between government forces and rebels. Machar, leader of the main rebel group, the SPLM-IO, and other insurgent factions, signed the new agreement with the Juba government after assurances that a power-sharing accord would be honored. The deal, mediated by Sudan, reinstates Machar to his former role as vice president.
Milestone and a great stride towards building
Some great news there, hoping it will hold. Now an Indian man is undertaking a different kind of protest. Dadarao Bilhor smoothes the road surface, rests his shovel, looks to the sky and prays for his son, one of thousands of Indians killed every year in accidents caused by potholes. Prakash, a promising student, was just 16 when he died in July 2015 in Mumbai, India's hectic financial and Bollywood capital of 20 million people. To help deal with this grief, Prakash's devastated father, Dadarao, decided he would do something about Mumbai's roads, which, like much of India's, are notoriously shoddy. Using sand and gravel collected from building sites, Bilhor has filled in almost 600 potholes across India's financial capital in the past 3 years. Government statistics show that potholes were responsible for the deaths of 3,597 people across India last year, an average of 10 a day. Citizens blame government apathy, accusing local authorities of failing to maintain roads properly. Activists say contractors hired to repave roads do a bad job on purpose so that the work will need to be done again the following year.
Family Bank Eldoret Half Marathon route that has been changed to make the event more competitive for the race that will be held on the 7th of October. The 21-kilometer men's and women's races start at Tendwa High School, Talget, and end at the Zion Mall, while the 5-kilometer corporate race will begin at the Kaul La Amani Church and finish at the Zion Mall. The winners of the 21-kilometer races will take home 250,000 shillings each, while the first and second runners-up will take home 150,000 and 100,000 shillings respectively. Last year, Joram Lumbasi edged out Isaac Kipkoech to defend his 21-kilometer men's title, while Pauline Korikwang took the women's race. Proceeds from the races will go to education projects for the autistic children.
An attractive race, an enjoyable race that we will all be able to enjoy, not only the athletes, but even the visitors, even the spectators, because a well-organized race attracts everybody, including the media.
So we are delighted that the marathon vision to nurture talent is already in the fertile ground. And the fact is, the city of champions is bringing them up, and this is where we want to be.
The draws for the Britain Kenya Open Tennis Championship that serves off on Saturday will be conducted at the Nairobi Club this afternoon. By Thursday's deadline for entries, a record 73 men and 35 women had registered for Tennis Kenya's biggest calendar event. Ugandan Duncan Mugabe and Natalie Coronel of Argentina, who are the defending champions for the men's and women's singles events, will be absent, having committed to other events earlier in the year. This year's championship has attracted players from Zimbabwe, Zambia, Rwanda, Uganda, Japan, Ethiopia, Tanzania, Burundi, Germany, Sudan and Ghana, as well as hosts Kenya. Kenyan international striker Masud Juma is set to join Oman Professional League champions Dhofar club. The pacey forward left the country for the Arabian Peninsula nation on Thursday morning and is set to be unveiled this afternoon. Dhofar, who hosts their games at the 12,000-seater Al Sadar Stadium, are the current champions and the most successful club in the country with 10 titles and 8 domestic cups. Football Kenya Federation President Nick Mwendwa is gunning to be elected as one of the 7 African representatives in football's 4th most powerful office to serve in the FIFA Council. 4 other candidates in Tanzanian Lyoga Tenga, South African FA President Danny Jordan, Elvis Chetty from the Seychelles and Malawi's Walter Nyamalimbu are challenging Mwendwa ahead of the polling exercise, which is set for the CAF's General Assembly in Egypt. World champion Lewis Hamilton said consistency has helped him and his Mercedes team be ahead of the competition so far this season. This as the departing Ferrari driver Kimi Räikkönen left much to the imagination at a press conference, refusing to be drawn on his motives for joining Sauber and revealing that it was not his decision to leave Ferrari.
I think it's just really